We are live. Appreciate y'all being here. We've had an amazing year. Looking forward to 2024. Want to break down these fights, talk about some UFC future champion bets, which I know a lot of folks are excited about right now. Bet Online and DraftKings have those. It's betting on who's going to be the champion a year from today. I've already got like way too many bets on that, including some that I placed just yesterday that you can get in on. Appreciate y'all being here. We've got a lot to be thankful for. If you're watching this, you got a lot to be thankful for. One of the things I'm thankful for is you guys. So thanks for being here. Quick shout out, like always, to the top expert of last week, which was AJ of MMA Experts. Did a great job. He was on Bryce and Jacoby, but those were his only misses, I'm pretty sure. He was on Gaziv, stayed off of Durden. He was on Aldana, of course, on Leon. So great job to AJ of MMA Experts, one of the studs in the game, one of the legends, earning a Ruby for being the top expert of the week. We're going to get right into these fights. At the end of the video, we'll talk about the future bets that I know a lot of you are excited about. And let us know in the chat, like, you know, if you got any kind of counterintuitive, any champion picks that no one else would ever think of. Excited to chat about those. All right, we'll get right into these fights, try to make these fast for you and very informative. Of course, this is a rematch. Last time they fought, we saw the illegal knee up against the cage as Johnny was trying to get to his feet. You know, like one of the most vicious, powerful knees you'll ever see. Blasted Johnny. He seemed to eat it with no problem at all. In the past, he's had some durability concerns, but I was really impressed with how he ate that knee. Early on in the fight, one of the things that everyone wanted to look out for, of course, was the low kicks. We saw the low kicks from Jan Blachowicz really affect Magomed big time, obviously. Midway through round two, Jan had him limping. He wobbled him. He dropped him. Magomed had to switch to orthodox. And within just a couple kicks, Jan had that lead left leg of Magomed's all busted up too. So one of the adjustments that's pretty interesting here, like at about 310 here, we see kind of some Sean Strickland style low kick defense here from Magomed. This is interesting. Magomed's actually been training at Extreme Couture with a bunch of studs over there, including Sean Strickland. So I found that really interesting. This is a very new wrinkle because he did nothing to address the low kicks from Jan, as I mentioned. Here, the finishing sequence happens after Magomed lands a couple of nice straight lefts to the body. You see Johnny circling away from the left hand and Magomed there getting away from the power and then backing up. And we see those two straight lefts to the body really work well. I think this is half possum and half real. I do think this body shot hurt Johnny a little bit, but obviously not as much as he pretends here. He ends up getting caught, getting that flying knee caught. Magomed drags him up against the cage. And upon the stand-up, we see that vicious knee, of course. When this fight originally happened, I thought that Magomed would have a little trouble reaching him. You know, Johnny, we all know him well, right? He's unorthodox, diverse, lots of spinning attacks, great power, you know, wild kicks, very powerful everywhere, big for the division. In the past, his ground game, his durability, and his fight IQ were kind of his concerns, if you will. And I think those have cleaned up a little bit. You know, he went to SBG Ireland not too long ago, and there was a lot of talk around his kind of change of strategy, being less reckless, more methodical, fighting prize fights, which is necessary when you get to that top of the division. Back in the day when Johnny got in the UFC, he was just dropping everybody, knocking everybody out. He had a 3-fight streak of round 1 KOs there against Serkinov, Ledet, and Roundtree. As he moved up the division, he started getting more methodical, as I said. Like this Thiago Santos fight was very low volume, 5-round fight where they're landing less than 10 significant strikes per round. This fight was like minus 750 to not go the distance and went the distance, right? Like we saw a change in Johnny, and for a while there, it didn't look like it's working. I think it's been working much better now. He has kind of turned a corner in his game, right? So I do think that Johnny's being undervalued here. He's so talented, but so unpredictable that he should probably never be a 4-1 favorite over anybody. Well, I also think that means he should never be a 4-1 dog to anybody. I do think he's live here. I do think we saw some okay moments there in the first matchup. I think Magomed's power is a tad overrated. similar to Johnny. When Magomed got in the UFC, he was just knocking everybody down, getting a bunch of KOs. At the upper level, that hasn't really worked. Blachowicz has a granite chin, so take it with a grain of salt, but we didn't see Jan in any trouble. I think we got to throw the Anthony Smith fight out the window. I think Anthony's not at his best anymore. It was kind of an unusual moment when Anthony Smith turned away on the ground. I've never seen anyone do it. He was on his knees and just turned away on the ground away from Magomed. It was, not a great moment for Anthony there. So I think we just throw that KO finish out the window, essentially. The Thiago Santos fight was a solid fight, pretty low volume. I think at this upper level, Magomed's power is not as thunderously effective as people kind of think of it when they think of his power in his mind. We know he's a good wrestler. He has gotten some cage control, right? So we saw Johnny getting up here. There's a very decent chance that Magomed might have just controlled him against the cage. We've seen a lot of that. But despite the slight adjustment to his low kick defense there, he's finally doing something to address the low kicks. If we didn't see that, if I didn't see that moment I showed you where he kind of did the Sean Strickland style of striking low kick defense, I'd be pretty darn confident in Johnny here. But I think this is big for Magomed, and I think we'll continue to see him get better at that low kick defense. I think Magomed's the pick, but I don't intend to parlay him at all. I might even bet like Johnny decision. Last time I was on Johnny decision, but that was a 3-round fight. This is a 5-round fight. So lots of unknowns. I think money will continue pouring in on Magomed because it's the last fight of the night, and people will want to include it as a parlay leg because they could hypothetically hedge off if things are going their way. So I think parlays are going to continue to include Magomed. If you're on Johnny, you probably want to wait until the last minute. We got a stud in the chat, Amazing Bets. He thinks the line's a little wide here as well. Lots of unknowns. I think, it's so kind of scary to even imagine, but I think fight to start round 2 might be like minus 200. I do think this fight starts round 2. I think Johnny decision has some value. Really tough one. Should be fireworks. All right, next up, we got another rematch here. Nicolau versus Manel Kape, another big fight, big for the flyweight division here. I think the UFC would love to see Manel get a couple more victories, stack those up, and get a title shot. Nicolau looked like he was headed that direction. He was like 8-1 in the UFC if you include Tough on a four fight winning streak until Brandon Royval got that gorgeous knee up the middle last fight. What does Nicolau do well? He's a great offensive fighter, really good striking, sits down on his combos, sits down on his counters. He's got great offensive jiu-jitsu. The problems with him, if you will, any concerns, is that he doesn't really low kick a lot. He almost always gets out low kicked, but he is one of the best body strikers in the world. Like, he might be better than Jack Della, even though Jack has more power. Matheus lands body shots at an incredibly high clip. You look at this Tim Elliott fight where he fought off 9 of Tim's 10 takedown attempts, and he actually landed more body punches than head punches. Like, these are all at distance, and Matheus lands 31 body shots, only 28 headshots. He's incredibly accurate to the body, so he almost always gets out low kicked. I think that's a concern against Manel, but gosh, that body work is really gorgeous. Manel, a stud coming from Ryzen, had a lot of hype. We saw him take some time to acclimate to the UFC. And Ryzen, they fight in a ring, but more importantly, they use wrestling shoes. And early in his UFC career, we saw him needing to adjust. We saw like some slips. Seemed like his footwork wasn't quite there. Nicolau won the first matchup between these two, but it was really close. A lot of people call it controversial. It was indeed a split decision. Essentially what happened there, Matheus got 2 takedowns, I think like 6 minutes of control time, if I recall, 2.5 minutes of control time. But Manel was just much more powerful and efficient on the feet. You wonder why is Manel, a 2-1 favorite here, like a whopping Tapology percentages on Manel here. You wonder why when he lost the first matchup. I think it's 3 assumptions. We assume that Manel's improved. Second, we think Manel did better in the striking in the first matchup. And third, I think it's the durability concerns that Nicolau's starting to have that make people pretty confident that Manel's going to catch him. Tough fight. I do have Manel in one parlay, like a really risky parlay. As a lot of you know, we do like a tier 1, which is pretty much even money for a lot of units, and then a couple of riskier, lower unit tiers of parlays below that. Manel's in that very riskiest tier of parlay, the tier that also includes like Sean O'Malley future, for example. So if Manel loses, I'll be losing 1 unit on a really risky parlay. I think he gets it done, but Nicolau is just so talented, so good everywhere. It's hard to just fade someone's chin. And I don't like calling fighters chinny. Out of all the insults a fighter, out of all the criticisms a fighter could get, I must imagine that durability concerns are like the most insulting. You know, you can say anything you want, say I'm slow, bad cardio, no power, bad fight IQ. That's all okay. But if you say I can't take a punch, that's like, you know, those are fighting words. So I have to assume for these amazing fighters that we all admire so much, they don't like people talking about them having durability concerns. So I don't say that lightly, but I do think we've seen Nicolau react big time to shots in the past, and we just saw him go out cold in that Brandon Royval fight, of course. Next up, I've got 2 bets on Jim Miller here. Jim Miller, such a stud in the game. He had kind of a downtime in his career after he went through Lyme disease and took a long time to come back from that. I think he's looked really, really good. He's fighting the very bottom rung of the division with respect. This last fight over Jesse Butler, you know, it looked like Jesse didn't quite have the sound defensive knowledge that a UFC fighter would need on the feet. Jim Miller was fighting out of southpaw, just kept getting the lead leg outside of Jesse's lead leg, and Jim threw just 2 really nice 1-2 combos straight down the pipe. It looked like, with respect, like Jesse shouldn't be in there, right? So of course we know the level of competition is to be considered here, but I do think Jim Miller's a really strong bet. I bet him at plus 114. Money's been coming in on him. I played him again at like plus 105 with a couple of future UFC favorites, like Renny Nakamura, Temba Garembo, Natalia Silva, a couple other folks. In addition to the power, the fight IQ, the well-rounded game of Jim Miller, you know, Gabriel also has some durability concerns. Even Charlie Ontiveros, you know, was hurting him pretty good there in the early moments. Gabriel Benítez, we know about him. We know the powerful kicks. Everyone's going to talk about his powerful kicks. He kicks like a heavyweight, we know. But, you know, as I mentioned, he's seen some durability concerns. This David Onama loss, he was on short notice. Benítez was. He didn't look good on the scales. He said he'd had some lasting impacts from being sick. So maybe we need to give him a kind of something of a pass on that David Onama fight. But the last thing I'll mention that makes me especially confident in Jim Miller here is just the defensive liabilities that we've seen from Mowgli in the past. You know, we saw him out absolutely just rinsed on the ground by Billy Quarantillo. He's got just 58% takedown defense. I think Jim Miller can win anywhere he wants to here. Next up, a really tough one, a really exciting one. Ricky Simón versus Mario Bautista, another very important fight for title implications here coming up. You know, Ricky lost his last fight, but he's been looking good before that. Previously, Ricky was just kind of known as a wrestler. Strong cage control, strong double legs. If you get up, he's going to pick you up, walk you across the cage, and slam you. We've actually seen that in like consecutive fights from him. Powerful slams. Maybe you fight off the first couple takedowns, but he just grinds on people, and those slams take so much out of you. We've seen many UFC fights end by slam, of course. I think Ricky's live to do that at some point. He's often kind of got his head in a guillotine when he does those slams, but you know, zero concern of him smashing his own head or getting choked out. He knows exactly what he's doing when he does that. I think that Ricky is the pick here. He better not strike too confidently. Like his striking's really improved. He's got power. Jack Shore found that out. But Bautista on the ground, I think, is just much more polished and faster with better kicks. And it really just comes down to a pretty binary fight here, whether or not Ricky can get the takedowns. We've seen, you know, Bautista fight good wrestlers like Blackshear, but Damon was on short notice. You might recall Damon Blackshear got that twister victory just a few days later, like 4 days later. He signed up to fight Bautista like a week and a half later. So this was like a week and a half between fights for Blackshear. probably didn't see the best version of Blackshear. It's not short notice like he was coming off the couch, but making weight 2 times. And this was indeed a bantamweight fight. Like Blackshear didn't get a catch weight fight there or anything. Blackshear having to make weight on 2 weeks out of 3, I think affected him. Still, Kelleher, solid wrestler. Like we've seen Mario get taken down and still win. I think here, though, Ricky could really grind on him, continue getting those takedowns. It's like Jay Perrin got him down twice, right? Even Guido Canetti got him down. Jinsu Sun got him down twice, and Mario was still able to come back and win those fights. I think Ricky probably wins a decision here. Tough fight, though. I'm a big fan of both. Really big fan of Ricky Simón. All right, another fight I've got 2 bets on. And they're both on Bruno Figueiredo. I got him at plus 110 and then again at minus 105. I think by fight time, he might be like minus 150. Right now, he's about minus 120. Similar fighters here, lots of power, very strong, stocky, both typically at a reach disadvantage. This is actually one of the rare times that Hawes is going to be the bigger fighter in here, and he's more technical. He's got straight shots. Everyone's going to give you the same breakdown here. It's that Phil Hawes is probably the better fighter, but he has those durability concerns. We've seen him go out cold to just a straight right from Ikram Eliskarov. It was a 1-2. The jab didn't really land. The right straight got him right across the chin, and Hawes was out cold. If I recall, he landed like face flat. Before that was the KO loss to Roman Dolidze, where Hawes hurt his leg. Dolidze showed some class and kind of gave him a way out. He gave him a chance to give up, but Hawes wanted to keep fighting, and kudos to him. Gritty MF showed a ton of heart there, but the combo, the striking that ends up knocking him out was just so brutal. Like 6 straight punches from Roman Dolidze, and Hawes again was out cold. Chris Curtis caught him a couple fights back. The Duran Win fight. Duran Win, a really solid wrestler, but undersized for the division. I think we kind of throw that fight out the window. Kyle Dacus was a fine win. Hawes is often in close fights. He's got a lot of power, gets a lot of knockdowns, but and he's more technical here, as I mentioned. But I just do think that Bruno's going to end up catching him. In Hawes's defense, we've seen Bruno not look great. We've seen Bruno losing. The Gregory Rodriguez fight, I think Robocop was doing really well there, and then just got caught. And then last time out, we saw Bruno get knocked out himself in just over a minute, despite being a big favorite against a UFC newcomer. I kind of want to give him a small pass here because it happened when he got a low kick caught. Nursultan caught him with a straight shot right down the pipe while Bruno was on 1 foot off balance. Part of the concern, though, is that Bruno really fell back and landed on his head pretty good there. Bruno was completely out. So we haven't seen like huge, durability concerns from Bruno until that last fight. It's probably nothing to be worried about. If we're betting chin to chin, you already know I'm on Bruno twice. This is a fight that you'd probably want really high exposure to in DFS. I really think somebody's going to sleep here. A lot of those Hawes fights are, just a little bit concerning, though. Like sometimes we see really high volume. Other times we've seen him a little lower volume. I guess Nasruddin would be the best example there. But overall, I think we're going to see a high DFS score here. Let's just see real quick what the Tapology is on, since it's something of a pick'em fight. Yeah, 83% of folks, despite Figueiredo being a slim underdog just a week and a half ago, 83% are on him. About 70-something% of the overall picks are on Bruno by KO. All right, next up, we got Arlovski versus Waldo. We all know Andrei, legend of the game, had some big-time durability concerns himself for a while there. He kind of kicked them by fighting more technical and methodical, being a prize fighter, having better fight IQ and better technique than these low-level UFC heavyweights he was fighting. But there's definitely a trend there where he was fighting guys that didn't have a lot of power, and he was able to win decisions against them. Last couple times out, though, we've seen him finish against Bresky, and then, had that Marcos Rosario de Lima. It says decision there is supposed to be a submission. He was finished twice in a row. I think that Waldo's definitely going to get a KO here. I'm really confident in Waldo. I've got lots of parlays on Waldo. I think he's going to make it look really easy. Waldo's technical, better athlete here, better cardio, long jab, slightly better reach and height, more power. I don't think we're going to see Arlovski go for takedowns or anything. I think that Waldo is, you hate to say it in the heavyweight division, I think Waldo's a lock here. 87% of Tapology is on it. That's what you'd expect from a minus 500 favorite. But I think these Arlovski voters might just be kind of old school fans of the game like myself and maybe perhaps nostalgic. I don't think we're going to see a lot of bets on Arlovski this week. Next up, maybe the toughest fight on the whole card, and it's like just the most binary fight you can possibly imagine. We got Matt Semelsberger, stud, lots of power, but we've seen him with takedown defense problems lately, and that led to Jeremiah Wells, who was literally out there in the very first 15 seconds of his semi-fight. He was out, completely out, was able to bounce back, get takedowns. Jeremiah gets dropped again in round 2, still able to get the takedowns, and then round 3, Semi was pretty tired, and Wells got the easy takedowns there. Semi is just tough to predict. He's won as a big underdog. He's lost as a favorite. Overall, he's got out volumed on the feet before, and the takedown defense concerns that I mentioned. As you probably know, Parsons is just nonstop wrestler, huge, thick, wide back, just looks huge for the division. Really good wrestler, not very good striking. Totally binary fight here. As I said, I think the longer the fight goes on, it probably favors Preston Parsons. I think I'll end up picking Parsons here, but it doesn't feel good. And, I'm a fan of both these guys. I like Semi a lot. Semi's got the power. I think everyone in the world has the same breakdown here. You can look at specific techniques in the takedown defense, and you still can't make a big judgment on how this fight's going to go, because sometimes Semi does the right things, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he stays at distance when he gets a guy hurt. Sometimes he over pursues a tad, makes that takedown a little easier. To say that we have no idea what we're going to see here is fair, I think. So I think my pick would be Parsons. One concern here, though, Daniel Rodriguez fight. He was actually able to defend all the takedowns. That was earlier in Parsons' career, obviously. I think it's really that Trevin Giles fight that would give me pause too. It's just so tough. The more you look at the MMA math and the resumes, the more you lean towards Semi. But I just can't imagine this fight without Semi landing on his back from a takedown at some point, probably multiple times. Really fun one here. Marcus McGhee is just one of the coolest fighters. He's so positive and awesome. I think everyone's a fan of Marcus McGhee. He's also got thunderous power on the feet. That being said, though, JP Buys has some durability concerns. It looks like a submission on his record against Journey Newsome, but it was a club and sub. He dropped Journey Newsome there as well. We've seen him drop multiple fighters with straight shots. He's not out there looping things. He's not loading up on his power. He drops people with jabs and straights really consistently. It was not too long ago, though, that we saw Rafael do Nascimento rinse him on the ground. It was just not a good look. And that was just July 2022. We know that McGhee trains at one of the best gyms in the world, specifically for lighter fighters. You got Kai Matrix, you got Sean O'Malley, and Mario Bautista. And Bautista and McGhee are both peaking at the same time, right? So I assume we're going to see great versions of Bautista and McGhee here, like we always do. But still, and I think McGhee's surely improved is the point, since this July 2022 fight a year and a half ago. Luckily for him, Gaston Bolaños is not going to be wrestling him here. This is going to be a really good striking fight between two very similar strikers. They've got stocky builds, tons of power, and they're technical. I think on the feet, this is going to look like a pick'em. The reason that Gaston is a big underdog here, money's come in on him. When this line came out, McGhee was minus 350. Now he's minus 250. And I think a lot of people are thinking the same thing I'm saying, which is it could be a very close fight on the feet. The problem with Gaston is he has no takedown defense. McGhee, we've never seen him wrestle offensively, really. But I think he should be able to here. McGhee's going to be the pick. I don't have him in a single parlay, and I won't. Should be a really fun fight to watch. Let's just see real quickly. I'm sure everyone's on McGhee. Yeah. Everyone knows McGhee. Everyone remembers him. He's memorable because of his post-fight interviews. He's super cool. Like, I think this is overinflated. I think the more that people watch tape, you're going to hear people say that Gaston is a really good striker, and this could be a close fight here. All right. Another fun one here. Another binary fight. We got Basharat, Charlie Kelly's favorite fighter, versus Taylor Lapilus. Taylor Lapilus, we last saw him on UFC Paris, that incredible event with that incredible Parisian crowd, where he got the decision over Callan Loughran, the Irish wrestler. Lapilus was actually in the UFC back in the day too. He's always had really good takedown defense. The problem here for Lapilus, I think, is that Farid is not just like going to be telegraphing the takedown. It's much tougher to defend those takedowns when Farid's putting good volume on the feet on you, right? I think that Farid's going to be able to get takedowns, and we're seeing Farid just improve at such a rapid pace. Clayton Rodriguez is decent, right? And Farid made him look like he's not UFC level. Like, he really looked good there, just controlling Clayton, passing guard with ease. Farid's incredibly well-rounded. We've never seen really any durability concerns. We've never seen any fight IQ concerns out of him. Back in the day, his resume was the only concern. Even like if you look on Tapology, Marco Zanetti was 4-0, and you're like, oh, look, Farid beat a guy that's 4-0. That Marco Zanetti resume is like just completely inflated. I think, so even when you look on Tapology at Farid's former opponents, they look a little better than they were. Still, Alan Bagoso, who he fought on DWCS on Contender Series, is really good. I think Farid's going to be able to strike. It's going to look really good. Lapilus has really good boxing, a nice pawing jab, and then he pops the straight on you. But I think Farid's kicks, threat of the takedown, cardio, I think Farid's a really confident pick for me here. And he's only minus 200. I think now he's like minus 250, actually. Money's been coming in on him. Really, really confident pick for me there, even though Taylor Lapilus is a stud. Absolute stud. All right. Westin Wilson versus Jan Silva. Jan Silva's awesome. He's one of the coolest fighters. He's always high-fiving his opponents, playfully taunting, like respectfully taunting. He's funny. He's fun. And he's exciting as hell. He's got great power on the feet. The concern here, I think, is that Westin Wilson's jiu-jitsu is just so freaking good. He almost had Joanderson Brito in a knee bar. Westin Wilson is not real impressive on the feet. He has kind of a bouncy karate style. And when you see him for the first couple seconds, you're like, ooh, this guy's probably really good on the feet. He kind of looks like Wonder Boy. But his striking defense is not there. Power is not there. Footwork, while bouncy, he kind of gets just stuck in the sand. He's not able to evade or cut angles or anything really well. Everyone's obviously really confident in Jan. He was minus 800. Now he's like minus 750. I think Weston's submission threat is scary here, though. One thing I'll also say about Westin is that he is susceptible to being Peruvian necktied. He sticks his body like in this kind of turtle position, sticks his neck out there when he's often, kind of playing footsies, looking for leg locks and looking to advance position. He's susceptible to Peruvian necktie. I'm going to probably be playing that at plus 20,000 or plus 5,000 or something insane on BetMGM under the exact method props. I think Gian gets a KO probably in the first round. Everyone thinks that. I'll just caution you with the Westin Wilson submission threat. Might be worth a hedge. All right. A really, really good fight, even though not a lot of folks know Bunez. Joshua Van, we saw him last time out against Kevin Borjas. Kevin Borjas is good. And early on, Borjas was catching him. But Van is just so gritty, durable, has such a suffocating forward pressure style that and such great body work, just amazing, amazing, amazing boxing. Some of the best boxing in the UFC, even though we've only seen him fight twice. I'm confident saying Joshua Van has some of the best boxing in the UFC. And that's what's making him a big favorite here. The thing about Felipe Bunz is he's got really good striking as well. It's developed. On paper, he kind of just looks like a submission wizard, But lately, he's kind of fallen in love with the striking. He's been lighting fools up. The level of competition, even though like this was the vacant LFA title fight, or if I recall, I think it was vacant, even though I didn't type that here. Even though this was a LFA title fight, Yuma Horiyuchi was not a real high-level opponent there. Huáscar Cruz, very past his prime. Last time he fought somebody good was Jussier Formiga, former UFC fighter, obviously. Formiga hadn't fought in a year and a half, and this was essentially Formiga's retirement fight. He hasn't fought since then, and he really showed the lapses in ground game from Felipe. He just took his back, out wrestled him, made it look like a former UFC contender that Formiga is versus a non-UFC fighter, which is what Felipe was. So Felipe is dangerous, a really fun fighter, dangerous on the feet. We saw Borjas clip, Van and hurt him in round 1, as I said, but I think it's going to be largely a striking fight, and Van's going to make it look rather easy, especially as the fight goes on. I think if Boons can win round 1, either by catching him or by somehow getting a takedown, I think you definitely want to live bet Van. Van's only loss is by sub. Boonez is dangerous. I'm pretty confident in Van here, though. Right on. Next fight up, Tom Nolan versus Nicolas Mota. Nicolas Mota has obviously been around the UFC a while. Tom Nolan's coming fresh in from Contender Series. Got to be careful with these hyped up Contender Series people that are coming off one win against a non-UFC fighter, and then they're a favorite over a UFC fighter. Problem is, these guys are both strikers, and Tom Nolan's way bigger with much better chin, solid power both ways. But it's the durability of Mota that's the issue. Jim Miller starched him. The Manuel Torres KO was really gorgeous and pretty powerful. And it was a lead elbow. It was kind of hard to see. I recall Felder, like all the commentators, couldn't quite figure it out until they saw the replay. It was just a gorgeous lead elbow from Manuel Torres. They're a really good fighter. Moto's good. He can crack anybody. He's got power in his hands. He's going to be having trouble reaching Tom Nolan here. I think Tom is going to get it done here. I have Tom in those riskier parlays as well. Not a very confident parlay leg, just included in those risky ones. Last item here. Everyone's really low on Mota because of the Trey Ogden fight. Trey Ogden's a different fighter than Tom Nolan. Trey Ogden is a really good striker. He was piecing Mota up on the feet. That doesn't bode well for Mota here. But Ogden has that threat of a takedown that makes striking against him difficult. Easier for Mota to strike here against Tom Nolan when he knows it's going to be a striking affair. Still, the reach, the power, the youth, and the durability here make Tom a pretty easy pick. I'd say Mota also has the gym advantage as well. And that is it. Ketlen Vieira versus Macy Chiasson has been called off. This is kind of relevant because Ketlen Vieira was a really high up pick for the UFC future bets, which we can dive into now. So I just placed a couple yesterday. I'll mention that they are incredibly risky, and here's why. Because I've already got like every confident UFC future you could ever want at way better odds. Got a million parlays with Shavkat to be champ a year from now. Really need Blanchfield to come through. Was getting them at like plus 400, plus 500. Tom Aspinall was plus 1,800, then plus 16, then plus 11. Now he's like plus 200. There's a lot of people that I'm confident are going to be champ a year from now. Problem is the odds are way steamed now. So when we look at, like this one's pretty juicy. I just need Shavkat. It just comes down to Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel probably won't end the year as champ, but I think he's got a chance. One thing for middleweight is just the activity level of Sean Strickland makes the middleweight division much more open than any other division. A lot of divisions we see 1.5 title fights per year. With Sean Strickland, if he retains over Dreykus, we might see 3 or 4 middleweight title fights this year, and that opens the door up for a couple fighters, including one that I'll bring up here in a minute. That's really risky, plus 10,000 middleweights. And if it wasn't for that activity level of Sean, the year is just not long enough for some of these folks to get a shot. But I think middleweight's open for that reason. So yeah, it'd be really lovely if Shavkat and Bo Nickel win the titles, and if these other 5 champs just retain. But overall, really confident in Shavkat, really confident in Aaron Blanchfield. I think Jamal is the best light heavyweight. I was getting him at plus 450. And we'll leave it at that. So now with that preface, let's see here. There's another one I'm excited about. So this is 3 of the same parlay, just different bantamweight title holders. I'm a Sean O'Malley fan. I got a lot of respect for him. Sean's good. I'm going to be really heavy on Sean versus Cheeto here coming up. But I think in a year, it's either Merab, Umar, or Corey Sandhagen that are the champs. So, for these reasons, I've already got Blanchfield, Shavkat, and a ton of stuff. It makes it hard for me to go place any more bets. So the bets I've got coming up are incredibly risky here. Yair, featherweight champ. It's 50-1. He is ranked number 1 on Tapology here. So let me see. Whoops. Let's just go look at the rankings real quick. We know we got Topuria versus Volk coming up first, of course, right? Pardon. So let's think about who else in the top of the division could get there. Well, Movzar's fighting Arnold Allen coming up. If Movzar beats Arnold Allen, it's really hard to deny him that title shot anymore. Who else? Like Aljo's fighting Cater. Giga just pulled out of a fight. Emmett, we just saw him look really good, but he's 1-2 in his last 3 fights. Max is going to have trouble getting another title shot unless Volk loses. I think Yair at 50-1 to get a title shot and have a chance to win it in this coming year is very much worth the play. I played Yair for a full unit there. Second up, you see it. You see the plus 10,000 that I mentioned, and call me crazy, and it is. It's 100-1 for a reason. But let's think about the people above Joe Pyfer that could get a title shot. Izzy might not even come back for a year. Cannonier, I forget who he's got coming up. Maybe Nasruddin. Oh, no, Nasruddin, I think, is fighting Vittori coming up. Kamzat could get a title shot. Brennan Allen could get a title shot. Whitaker, I think it'd be tough. Delidze. Oh, it's Delidze fighting Nasruddin Imravov coming up. Pretty quickly here, you're to guys that have no chance of getting a title shot. I think Ikram Alaskarov could get a title shot, perhaps. Probably not, though. It's probably going to take him a little longer to build that name. Joe Bodybags can beat any of these fighters. He's got really underrated wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and obviously incredible power on the feet, and he's huge for the division. He's fighting Jack Hermanson on February 10th, and he's going to starch Jack Hermanson. Apologies. And I like Jack. Joe's going to be ranked in the top 13 at least, probably higher, because we're going to see some of these guys lose. And there's not a whole lot of guys above him that the UFC would want to put in a title shot. There's not a lot of guys that can win their next fight. After he beats Jack Hermanson, I think, Joe Pyfer can beat a lot of these guys. I think he beat Roman Delidze, Brennan Allen maybe. I think he probably beat Costa. Vittori's a tough fight for everybody just because of the cage control, but I think Joe Pyfer probably beat him. Maybe I'm overly hyped on Joe Pyfer, but at 100-1, I played that for a full unit. And lastly was Movzar, who we already talked about. If he beats Arnold Allen, he's basically obligated to get a title shot. A couple other thoughts here. Gilbert Burns at 35-1. He's right up there in the welterweight rankings. The UFC likes him. He's got a good personality. The UFC gives him tickets for him and his family. He's always there. The UFC likes him. We saw him look really good against Kamzat. And besides, Shavkat, obviously, Bilal next, Leon's lack of activity is a concern here, but Bilal's got a chance against Leon. I think, Dorino at 35-1 was worth looking at. I ended up passing on it. Next one, similarly, let's talk about bantamweight. Figgy is in the mix. He looked really good. I was wrong. I thought Rob Font was going to beat him. Figgy looked incredible last fight. He's got a big name. We got Cody Garbrandt calling him out. That's a big fight for the division. But gosh, look at all these guys above Ricky Simón. I'm sorry, above, Figgy and Ricky. It's going to be tough for Figgy to get there. The year's just not long enough. Kind of same thing with Tatsuro. I think Tatsuro would beat a lot of the guys ranked ahead of him. It's just not long enough of a year for him. And for whatever reason, Tatsuro keeps getting finishes. He's always a minus 750 favorite. The UFC always puts him on the first card of the night. The UFC has shown no interest in moving Tatsuro up the card. And perhaps, I would think that Japan would be a solid size market, but, there's other geographies that the UFC wants to have fighters from over them, right? Like the Dagestan, the kind of the Middle East area, and anywhere near Abu Dhabi. Where else? Sweden, England. Like there's a lot of places that UFC is pressing. Obviously, China. They don't seem to be giving that same love to the Japanese stud Tatsuro. So I just don't think he gets there, but I think he'd smoke a lot of the people above him. And we got Albazi, who's pretty much guaranteed a title shot coming up. The UFC wants to get Kape a title shot, I think, as well. And then those top three at the division, Pantoja, Royval, Moreno, I think they're going to remain the top three for a while, maybe Albazi as well. And I do think Kai Kara-France is really underrated, has underrated wrestling. I think Kai Kara-France still has an opportunity to be champion in this division at some point. Last one I looked at but passed on was Holly Holm. There's just not a lot of good fighters above her, simply. And, that's really something we need to consider here. She hasn't looked her best, I know, right? But Ketlin just fell out. Bueno Silva's about to fight. Aldana just looked great. Pena, I don't rate her skills very high. I think Holmes got, 35-1 chance to be champ a year from now, but I couldn't pull the trigger. So that's it. Wanted to get through these fast. Really appreciate all of you. Everything you saw today is on our $5 Patreon, including the top experts that we pick. Everyone loves being on here. They love it when they're the top expert of the week and we shout them out, giving them love. We also do the same kind of graphic for props. We got the written breakdowns for every fight with the links to the fight tape, as you saw. If it's let me find maybe a YouTube one. If it's a YouTube video, we try to get you right to the point where the fight starts. We skip the whole 7 minutes for you, so it's just really fast and easy and efficient to watch your tape. And it's a great community. Some of the best fans, genius chatters, genius folks in the Discord dropping soccer locks and everything. So follow us on Instagram, hit us up. We try to reply to messages. We want to do more videos like we used to in the coming year. It's just so much darn work. That on that note, show love to all these goats. Like all these people put in so much freaking work. You have no idea. They're positive, they're fun, they're entertaining, they're informative. They do this stuff for free. Show love to all these goats on here. And congrats again to AJ for being the top expert of the week. Lionel, I'm amazing. Zaid, lots of folks watching. Appreciate you all big time. See you soon. Happy New Year.